this.
A powerful storm system is blowing through the Great Plains and Midwest, combining with unusually warm temperatures to close highways and prompt numerous tornado warnings. The winds gusting up to 80 miles an hour hit parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa. The winds caused dust storms that closed down
everybody, how you
Interstate
doing?
70 and many state highways in western Kansas. The National Weather Service tornado reports in the Plain States.
Communities still digging out from the deadly tornadoes that killed dozens of people across 8 states in the South and Midwest are beginning to bury their dead. President Biden, who visited hard-hit Kentucky yesterday, is promising survivors the government will help them rebuild.
I intend to do whatever it takes, as long as it takes to support your state, your local leaders.
How's everybody? Hey, Linda from the Mojave Desert. How you doing?
The White House is
good to be with you
insisting we
today.
won't have to lock down again because
We're going
of
to
the
talk
new
about voting
Omicron
rights.
coronavirus
Did you see
variant
Senator
speeding around
Raphael
the world.
Warnock's
Here in the
wonderful,
U.S.,
it's a tremendous
36
speech
states have
on the
now
floor of the
reported
U.S. Senate
Omicron
yesterday?
cases.
You
White
know,
House
we were
Virus
able
Response
to,
Coordinator
there was
Jeff
no
Zients
discussion
says
or should I say no
vaccines and
question
masks.
about the filibuster just a few days ago.
School and our businesses open.
Suspended it
and we're
so
not
that we
gonna
could take
shut
care
down
of the money.
our
But our
economy
voting
anyway.
rights,
We're
not
gonna
so
keep our
much.
schools and our
So he
businesses
cast down the gauntlet, and I'm
A
very
new AP
excited
poll finds
that
that
he did that.
66% of
Because we're
Gen
facing
Z
a bipartisan
Americans
betrayal,
and
as far as
63%
I
of
can tell.
millennials think their
The
generation is
Democrats
motivated to make positive change.
need to come through
Gen Z is
for
13 to
all
24 years
Americans
old.
on
Millennials
securing
are
all of our
25 to
voting
40
rights.
years old.
Black people are the
Stocks were
focus of
up
voting
yesterday.
rights, but
The Dow
black people are
up
the canaries in the
383
mine.
points.
If
This is
the most
AP
vulnerable
News.
citizens in a society are not safe, nobody's
President
safe.
Biden and Senator Joe
And
Manchin
eventually you
don't
see it. Ask
agree
the
on the
people in
Democrats'
Kentucky and
$2 trillion
Illinois and
spending
Missouri and
bill
Arkansas,
we're
et cetera,
hearing.
et cetera.
The AP's
Everybody
Mike
was hit by the
Gracia with the
storms.
squabbling that's going on.
And now you've got
in
Joe
Washington.
Manchin standing in
fate
the
of the
way
Democrats' huge
of
social and environment
the
bill is
money. I mean,
very
it's
much
just,
in question, with a source telling the
you know,
Associated Press
this is
President
just
Joe
something
Biden and
that,
Senator Joe Manchin
that
are
just ought
sharply
to be
divided
unacceptable
over
to
elements
all
of
of
the
us.
package.
So
Manchin
I'm
is
glad
said
to
be
be with
pushing
you
to
today. I'm
erase
going
and
to
improve
look
child
at a
tax
couple
credits
more
from the measure,
things
but when questioned,
before I get
Okay,
we
Pastor
come
Brooks on the line.
up. Okay, let me bring up Pastor Brooks. Pastor Brooks.
meantime, Senator Bernie Sanders was clearly frustrated.
Pastor Brooks.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was
I am great.
Good, good, good. I'm going to try and come on as early as I can and just make sure you're out by 6:15.
I got a 6:15 writing it down.
Ready for Christmas?
Mike Cross,
With your family,
And
bless
on
your
the
heart.
highway, AP News.
It's every day, girl. Christmas every day to me.
I got it.
20 a.m.
And just think,
Willow Springs.
you know, just think.
Worldwide,
Look at the goodness of God. You're gonna have to come one day and talk about give us your testimony.
Yes,
Because who would have thought
Your WCPT 20
40 years ago?
God's word. Oh, which one?
I mean, just think about you and this beautiful wife and daughter. I mean, your father, husband, pastor.
79th Street is blocked.
You know, only God.
Yes, sir.
Only God.
All God.
You know, that's, I thought about that the night my father spoke at the Democratic convention.
Northbound Tri-State
because it was my birthday. And he walked to the microphone almost to the minute of my birth. And I kept thinking, I said, wow, 21 years ago tonight, we were homeless.
For an earlier crash there.
You know,
Wow.
we were living with the Halseys. My parents could not afford their own place. And the first place that my parents were able to get was a place in a housing project in Greensboro.
All of the intelligence,
my mother planted, her little garden in the front and all of that. And I thought about that. I said, inside of 21 years, look at God.
Chicago's
Look at God. God can do anything. Everybody. But you need to be faithful to God. But I tell you what, I am mindful of the fact that there are many people in the audience who are agnostic or who are atheists, and I want to be respectful of them and their beliefs. Because I get it. Everybody's not into that for a whole lot of reasons. And sometimes the church itself is turning people off. And I respect and appreciate that. And then people don't come from this particular tradition. We have Jewish brothers and sisters We have Muslim brothers and sisters. We have Buddhists. We have everybody. And so I want us to be mindful of that, because everybody doesn't come out of, in particular, the black church. And the black church has so many different strands too.
We've got just a couple seconds here.
Okay, can you bring the radio down just a bit so that, thank you so much, so that I can get to, are we at 55, are we at 6:05:45? Is that when we come up?
It's 6:05 now.
No, I'm looking at the milliseconds. Is it 45?
We've got about 10 seconds.
Okay, good.
Can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Thursday, December 16th, 2021. I want to hear your voices, everybody. AM 950 radio. Minneapolis, St. Paul is my home. WCPT 820, Chicago, the largest progressive talk radio station in the country. That is my home. I want to hear your voices today. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT. Want to hear your thoughts about what Senator Raphael Warnock, what he said yesterday on the floor of the Senate. He threw down the gauntlet. He said, look, we suspended the filibuster. We bent the rules, changed them, didn't consult with the parliamentarian or any of that, so that we could save our economy. What about the vote? What about the vote? So I want to hear your thoughts about that. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Matt, I'm getting a little feedback right now, so let's work on that. And I want to hear your thoughts today. I want to hear your thoughts about that. I mean, should we suspend the filibuster so we can get police reform through, so that we can get bills back better through? I mean, because guess what? Senators Paul and McConnell, I know they want some relief for Kentucky right now. I know they do. Where are they going to get that money from? And Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin, just approved for the 11th time more money to the military industrial complex, to the Pentagon. And they get money they didn't even ask for, year after year after year. And Americans are supposed to be begging. It's the most horrible thing, and we can change it. We can change it, and we must. So I want to know what your thoughts are today. And of course, we're going to be talking about all this, so many questions that we have around COVID-19. Omicron appears to be much milder than any variant that we have seen. And yet we're seeing Philadelphia absolutely clamp down. We're seeing a lot of, it's becoming a much more restricted, a more restrictive world to live in. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? And what about infection prevention, everybody? What about the protocols that we could observe that could help us to stop the spread? We did it before we had the vaccines last year. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And Kevin, thank you for reminding me, Jimmy Lee Jackson, of the civil rights activist whose killing really spurred the Selma movement, the Selma to Montgomery March. He was a veteran, and he was killed by a white mob as he was trying to organize people to vote. And of course, it was his death that got Mrs. Amelia Boynton to call Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And so much of our lives have changed. And thank you, Senator Warnock, for pushing to save the vote. And of course, dedicating the show today to Bell Hooks. Who is she? Dr. Bell Hooks, a towering intellectual, an African-American woman, a black woman, who was at Berea College in Kentucky. There is no one, we don't even know how many ways and how profoundly she has touched our lives. She has given voice to the Black American experience and to the American experience, and she took it out of the halls of academia into the world. She's really, her peers would be like a Skip Gates and a and a Cornell West, just 69 years of age. An undisclosed illness took her from us, but boy, she left a tremendous body of work. Bell hooks, everybody, sending her much love and thanking her and praying that she will rest in power today. Chicago, we will have a high of 60 degrees, cloudy, but the winds are high. Wow. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 27 degrees, cloudy. High wind alerts in both of these places and really throughout the Midwest. God bless us all, because with this hot and the cold, what does that portend? Some really, really crazy weather. Wow. The Dow closed up 383 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 327 points. The S&P 500 closed up 75 points. In the NBA, of course, we still have games postponed because of the COVID protocols that the Chicago Bulls are having to observe because of an outbreak on their team. But the Timberwolves were able to play last night, and they were triumphant, 124-107 over the Nuggets. In the NFL, the Chiefs will be playing the Chargers tonight. And in the NHL, Chicago was triumphant over the Capitals 5-4. And the Wild will be playing the Sabres tonight. Medical experts in the United States are bracing for a trio of threats this winter. They say that we will deal with the flu and COVID-19 cases and various variants. And so the CDC is predicting between 837 and 845,000 people will have died by January 6th. How many people will have lived? I think we need to talk about that too. What can we do to prevent these deaths? Build Back Better, the movement on the Build Back Better bill, the $1.75 trillion economic and climate change package that serves as one of the cornerstones of President Biden's legislative agenda, has likely stalled until next year. President Biden and the Democrats were hoping to pass the bill by the end of this year, but it seems that Senator Joe Manchin, a critical deciding vote, has not produced any resolution. And in fact, he's willing to go to pass Build Back Better if they eliminate the child care credit. Wow. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-WCPT. Nancy Pelosi is defending lawmakers and spouses trading personal stocks, everybody. Not to put stocks in a blind trust, but basically to benefit from insider trading. They would have knowledge of what's happening down the pike. A lot of, our legislators, a lot of them have gotten quite wealthy with the knowledge, this inside knowledge that they have. And so there is a call by progressives for that practice to end. And Speaker Pelosi said, no, it's a free market economy. People should have the right to trade as they choose. Guess how much money you owe? That's right. The federal debt, when you're in New York and when you are in Times Square, you see the federal debt clock and you see just about how much you owe. Every American, every every income tax paying household owes $287,859. Wow. $287,859. Can you believe that? Pastor Darius Brooks, you and First Lady Deborah are on the hook for almost $300,000. Ooh, I need some good news behind that.
Well, I'm going to keep getting me some counseling. That's what I'm going to get. Santita, in the day and time that we are in right now, I'm first honored to be on your program to share my thoughts and my belief. Everybody should have something or someone you believe in. You should have something or someone you believe in. We can't do this thing on our own. And you said something just before I came on. You said we can change it, and we must. Well, Santita, the only way we can change things is we need counseling. Whenever you're hurt, you need counseling. Whenever you need healing, you need counseling. Whenever things are not what they should be, you need some counseling. Martin Luther King was such an incredible person. Your dad is an incredible person. They got counseling on how to do this stuff. And one of the foundational ways that they got counseling was they had something and someone they believed in. Well, I believe in God and in His Word. And so my story comes from how He directs us to have compassion on people, heal the sick, go to the hospitals, feed the hungry, which is what we're doing every week, 400 to 600 people. God is a God of compassion. So if anybody going to relate to him in any kind of way, shape, or form, that's the best way you can represent God, by having compassion on people. First Chronicles 16:10 says, "Glory ye in his holy name. Let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his presence continually." And Santita, if I had to use for a thought today and try to get out of here by 6:14, I need counseling. Where are we in our lives? What we're doing? What are we doing? We getting counseling from you while we're on the radio. This information that you giving us is for everybody. It ain't just for Darius Brooks and Dosh and Deborah and Mommy that's listening. When it appears that everyone is going in all kind of different directions, you have to capture your covenant with what you believe in, or God, because my God, he won't fail. There are a lot of factors that comes that keeps you from a clear direction when it comes to this walk or this journey we call life. And often flesh is the human side of us, and we'll always try to operate here. We'll always try to operate in flesh. Unfortunately, without God's direction, you must get someone else's direction. And please be careful of even using your own, which is why you was talking about earlier how people just taking advantage of situations and not caring about people and not having passion. Those are our own thoughts. It could be a Russian roulette at the end of the day, because Reverend Jackson used to always say, if one ain't free, ain't none of us free. So that's a counseling moment. A fresh perspective won't work if you have not properly used the clear direction that's there as a foundation that we can all win and be happy. I'm about to bust up out of here, girl. Proverbs says, many plans are in a man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord will stand. I got to get up out of here, Santita, because I'm about to bust. You hear me? Counseling, advice, especially given formally, a recommended course of action. Give help or advice to someone to resolve personal matters. Don't be confused by comparing someone else's structure to how you are to obey God's word for you and how you need counseling. Over time, your healthy covenant, not relationship, will give you everything you need not to implode or give up or throw in the towel. I got to close with this. At the end of the day, keep the covenant partnership clear. There are not only rewards here, but also a promise of protection and peace. The humbling process starts this change.
Amen to that. Amen to that. We have to have something we can believe in. I love it. I love it. I love it. Of course, what is the address for your church and people who are looking to get fed in this holiday season very quickly? How can they come to your church, and when should they come?
Great Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, every Tuesday from 7 to 8 and every Sunday from 10:30 to noon. As a matter of fact, this Saturday, December 18th, Santita, I'll be in concert there singing some of the wonderful songs about the Christ that we serve and live in. Ooh, I wish you was here, girl, because you sure get on that stage and sing with me.
You know, look, hey, I promise you, if things change, I'll be there. I promise
Don't you play with me, Santita Jackson.
I promise
Santita,
you.
don't play with me this morning.
I promise you. I promise you.
I'll fall on the floor.
I promise you. I promise you. If I'm here, I will be there. I love Pastor Darius Brooks. I love you, Pastor Darius Brooks, everybody. Please get on over there, and also go to Rainbow Push. Every Saturday, we are giving out food baskets. Yes. We're giving out food baskets. And of course, yeah.
And I'm back helping Dad, too. I'm back over there.
Well, Pastor Brooks is our minister of music, I should say. And so we absolutely need that. We need that. We need it, and you need it. And so if you need something to eat, you should not be hungry in this season, not if we can help it, at Grace Central Church and at Rainbow Push. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist, and she's at Case Western Reserve University. And we just, as we're moving toward the holiday, and Pastor Brooks, you should stay here and listen to this. We're trying to figure out.
I am.
Please stay here, because we want her to walk us through how we can break bread together safely. Right. That's just one of the things we need her to help us to do. We're seeing that the NFL they're calling it a COVID super spreader. That is according to Vice News. That is their headline. We're seeing the NHL, we're seeing the NFL, the NBA, all having to cancel games because they're seeing surges in COVID, in COVID cases. And this is most of these leagues are more than 90%. These leagues are 90+% vaccinated. But clearly there's something that we're not doing because we saw the numbers go down last year before we got the vaccine. So, just take us through what our meal should look like. Because, we like to put the food out, either it's a buffet or the turkey and the ham in the middle of the table. And is that safe? How should we do this, Dr. Knighton?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I was going to say, I think the biggest thing is thinking about, so if we're just talking about the food, my brain goes like systematically, like just thinking about the interactions. But
wherever it goes,
about the food,
wherever it goes, you take it there.
Okay, so when we're thinking about food just in general, one of the concerns that I have is that, yes, a lot of people may be at home, they may agree to be unmasked, but even when people are serving the food, it doesn't hurt to wear a mask when serving, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of it is if we are thinking about eating, should it be self-serve versus it being buffet? Or meaning, should it be buffet versus it being someone that's plating everyone's food? Or should the food already be plated? These are all things that we have to consider, and I think the main objective is to make sure that we're not transferring germs. So, for example, if you are considering, and I'm not telling you that this is the best way, everyone serving themselves, I will recommend to people, not only are they cleaning their hands when they're coming to your house, they're cleaning their hands as they're standing in line. They're agreeing not to talk while they're in line to get food, so droplets are not falling directly down on the food. I want you to also think about everyone touching the spoons as they're going down the line or the serving utensils. So is there a situation of where there's another round of hand hygiene before that happens? People are going to pray the year in together. They're going to pray over food before they eat. A lot of us, say forget COVID and we're still joining hands for prayer, right? If that is still the case, you can still be prayerful by joining hands. Just make sure that you're cleaning your hands before and after. And so that you do that, we already know we touch our face about 2,000 times a day or more. And so just think about that person that's next to you that may have touched their nose, may have adjusted their mask, and now they're holding your hands during prayer. And so now right after prayer, you're going to eat. So now everybody's germs have exchanged on hands, and now they're touching the serving spoons. So it has to be a set rule that hand hygiene is going to occur often and frequently before serving food, after, you have direct hand contact. It's important. The other piece of it is when you're thinking about food, beverages, the number one thing to think about is, are the individuals that are putting out the plates, are the plates already sitting there, and are people sitting at the table talking over the plates? So there's some instances of where people, before they get ready to eat, they'll have like the nice fancy table set up, but then you'll have individuals that's sitting at the table. But if I'm sitting at, let's say, seat 4, I may not necessarily eat at seat 4. I'm probably just sitting there to have conversation with someone. So now my droplets are spewing over a plate that I may not use. And so I would suggest that if possible, there's a mingling area before you sit down and eat. I would also make it clear to guests that if you're sitting down and you're grabbing a certain plate, that once you touch that plate, that's your plate. Because what happens is someone will say, oh, well, I don't want to sit here anymore. They've grabbed that cup from that place, or they've touched that plate. Like, there's just certain things that we do that we have contact with. Even prior to making it in the same setting, people should be thinking about, especially with the spread, about illness just in general. Some of us want to gather so bad, some of us want to do activities together so bad that we're forgetting about colds, We're forgetting about flu. We're forgetting about the sniffles or a runny nose still produces droplets that can get someone sick. So how do we make sure that individuals really understand that before you come to my house, what do you have? Meaning, I don't care if you just say, oh, it's just a cold and not COVID. I don't want the cold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And many used to judge because they would say, well, the CDC's list is quite extensive. Because they would say, oh, do you got a cough, sneeze, runny nose, fever, headache? Like, it's all of this stuff on there. Diarrhea. Like, have you had nausea and vomiting? And somebody would say, well, that could be anything, so why is that list so extensive? At the end of the day, if you got any of that, something wrong with your body at that time, right? Like, it has to be. So it's like that's meaning that something is compromised within your body, whether it's COVID or not. So in order to eliminate the risk of having someone even come that may be under weather or not at 100%, those screening questions are asked so that way people really, truly understand that if any of these systems are off kilter or out of whack with your body, you could potentially be compromised with something that could transfer to someone else. And I think that's the key thing that we should be thinking about. So that would be my recommendations when it comes to food. It's just not talking over food. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about, let's say, the ketchup, let's say you're talking about barbecue sauce, you're talking about
other condiments. Right.
Yes, condiments, common use condiments. I get it. Not everybody can afford to have individually wrapped condiments. Mm-hmm. I get it. Just understand there are a lot of hands that are flipping the cap on the ketchup. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of hands that are going to be closing it back down. There are a lot of hands that are going to be squeezing the bottle. Just think about all of the hands that are going to touch something. Naturally, people will clean their hands, get their food, put their condiments on it, and start eating. People should remember that after you've already seasoned your food with any condiment that's available, you should be cleaning your hands again before eating. Otherwise, the minute that you start eating your roll, you've now touched all of the germs that was on the condiments that you took to season your food. So not only now is your food seasoned more with the condiments, it's now seasoned with more germs. And so I want people to think about that. And somebody might say, well, everybody's tested, everybody's vaccinated, everybody cleaned their hands. They may have, but it still doesn't mean that you didn't come in contact with someone that touched their nose briefly. I see it happen all the time. Mm-hmm. Like there's a small itch and someone like literally takes their index finger and rubs it briefly across the bottom of their nose and don't realize that they did it. So now they've rubbed it across the bottom of their nose. We know eyes, mouths, and nose. Eyes, mouth, and nose are the key transmitters of COVID. Your hand is the single most important way to transmit it, but it has to enter through your eyes, mouth, and nose. So if someone is touching their nose directly, you don't know if they're shedding viral germs or viral droplets in their nose. Even if it's not contaminating the rest of their system, we have to understand that you can still transmit COVID.
No, you know what? These are the things that we don't think about. Dr. Deborah Verholden has joined us. I want to give her 5 minutes on the other side of the break because you know what? We're going into not only the Christmas and holy season, we're in the midst of that, but we are in the political season. We're in the political season. We heard Raphael Warnock, Senator from Georgia, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, say, wait a minute, we bent the rules. We suspended the filibuster so we could take care of the money. What about the vote? What about the vote? And I have a question for you, Dr. Deb, when we get on the other side. What should we be asking of these people who are going to be running for office next year? I mean, what should we be asking when it comes to our health? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Dr. Deb?
morning.
Hey, sweetie, we were on a roll. That's why I had to keep on going. But I do want to ask you that, and I sent you. I know, you know me. I kept sending little stories in the middle of the night. I am sorry about that, but that's when I bumped into them.
I was actually up. I got up about 35
sure
minutes after you sent them, and I said, let me not text her back because heaven help if she has managed to fall asleep. I don't want to be the one to disrupt that.
Hold on.
Let me not text her back.
Well, you could always do that. Yes, I'm sorry. That was me. I'm trying to.
Did you
Yeah.
When we do Change the World, when I fade it out, did you want me to play that clip right after?
Come right in with that.
Okay.
Okay.
That.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So what we're going to be doing, I'm going into Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock, Reverend Dr. Warnock's speech on the floor of the Senate yesterday, in which he was really, he was upbraiding the Senate. He said, look, we've been talking about this filibuster for a minute. Now, we threw it out a few days ago so that we could take care of this debt limit. Now, we should be able to do this for voting rights. And you see now, Build Back Better, they're trying to throw that out. And what Joe Manchin is trying to do, he said he's willing to pass Build Back Better if we let go of the child care tax credits. It's just craziness. But there's also, the demand that there be public ownership of these vaccines, of the mRNA manufacturing. And so I want to, at least in the United States. So whatever you want to touch, if you want to go right to what we should be asking for, because I think that we should be training people. You should be training. That's not my space. To talk about, healthcare, because people getting these crazy bills with testing, Dr. Verholden. I mean, it's really getting crazy. They're getting really, really massive bills. A lot of stuff is happening. So are you all still there?
Did you say with testing?
Mm-hmm.
You said with testing?
Mm-hmm. Depending upon where they go. If they go to the emergency room and get tested, you can get thousands of dollars of bills. I'll send you one of those stories.
Oh, I believe you, because everything in aspirin in the emergency room is going to cost you 10 times more. You're going to pay 10 times more for 2 aspirins than you will a whole bottle.
It's crazy.
The pharmacy.
And you know that's crazy. You know it is.
Yeah.
You know it is, and it's cost prohibitive. I mean, it's crazy. Whether people are vaccinated or not, it's costing them. It's costing them. It's just too much.
Well, I'll tell you, Jordan spent all day yesterday, 7 hours, in the emergency room.
Is she okay?
And it was heartbreaking. Her hands have swollen and her arms, and now her foot is swollen. So she's clearly got some kind of circulatory problem, likely cardiac or kidney related.
1 minute.
Triggered by COVID, we don't know. But she was not mentally prepared for the experience, so she ultimately left because she was truly defeated. But the emergency rooms are all overrun. They put her in a room full of COVID patients, most of whom just took their masks off because they were coughing so much. They didn't want to keep coughing in the mask. And she said, I'm not COVID positive anymore. She might have some sequelae from COVID, but she's like, I'm not COVID positive.
30 seconds.
Okay, hold on. Hold that thought. Do we have McKee and Hoffler on?
We do. Would you like me to put them through right now?
Put them through, but also always send me that text, okay, honey? So I can know that they're there.
So
okay.
You know what, Dr. Deb?
Now, hold on. We're coming up. We're coming up, everybody. I'm sorry. And if you want to relate that experience, because it's an everyday experience. But Jordan has you, thank goodness.
Oh. Well, even that wasn't enough yet.
I know.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am.
Democrats have tried again and again to engage our Republican friends in a discussion on this issue, one that lies at the foundation of our democracy. And time again, because of a lack of good faith engagement, the rules of the Senate have prevented us from moving that conversation forward. We could not imagine changing the rules, that is, until last week. Because last week, we did exactly that. Be very clear, last week, we changed the rules of the Senate to address another important issue, the economy. This is a step, a change in the Senate rules we haven't been willing to take to save our broken democracy, but one that a bipartisan majority of this chamber thought was necessary in order to keep our economy strong. We changed the rules to protect the full faith and credit of the United States government. We've decided we must do it for the economy, but not for the democracy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. That was Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia. Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, senior pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Seniors home churches and home church, iconic church it is. And he is furthering that tradition and really leading in the not just as a minister, but as an elected official, He points out the hypocrisy, really, of last week. We've been debating whether we are going to get our voting rights reinforced, if we're going to get police reform, if we're going to get Build Back Better, because we want to consult with the Senate parliamentarian who's unelected by us and the people of the United States. And we're trying to figure out if we're going to be able to suspend the filibuster, where you need 60 votes in order to pass any legislation. Now, we're willing to suspend it for various and sundry things. And he said, look, last week when we wanted to save the money, save the economy, that's what we did. But every right that you have, everybody, rests on those that come from the vote. If you cannot vote, you are not a full citizen. And so we're in the election season, and Dr. Deborah Holden is with us, and Dr. Shanina Knighton is still here, of course, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Dwight McKee. Before we get to C.K. Hoffler, because he is your senator, and we just all claim him, we love him so much, and we're so proud of Senator Warnock, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock. Really, we are in the election season, and we want people like him arguing for us at the highest levels of our government. I'm watching something disturbing as we move into that topic. Dr. Deborah Holden, as we are going to emergency rooms, as we're going to get tested, we're seeing prices go through the roof. And we still do not have a healthcare system in the United States that works for most of us. It just doesn't. This is the number one way to go into bankruptcy. Getting sick, really. And you have a lot of wonderful people who work in the system, but the system it's a for-profit system. So what should we be looking for? If you can just give us, a few minutes, about 5 minutes, what should we be looking for in this, as we are electing people, as we are having conversations about our health care? What should we be requesting of the people who say they want to represent us?
Well, I think the first thing is if people didn't recognize, I'm sure many people are recognizing now, how critical your health and your health care is, right? These rising costs and the fact that some of these very basic services, and basic primary and preventive services that people rely on were stopped during COVID. Things that went unchecked, that then got out of control, and you ended up in the ED, an emergency department. And an emergency department bill is backbreaking for many people. One night in the emergency room could cost many people 3 months' salary. Mm-hmm. Who can afford that? And that might include people who have insurance. It depends on what insurance you have. So I think these are the kinds of things that people need to be looking at. What do you want affordable health care? And what does that really mean? We had a lot of adjustments that happened to the Affordable Care Act, and it actually became affordable for a lot of people during the COVID crisis. Are these going to be things that are going to be short-lived, or are they going to be sustained? We've got things like the child tax credit. They say that's going to be the biggest single thing that we've done in 40 years to lift kids and families out of poverty. You know, are people benefiting from that? Do they want to see that kind of stuff go forward? You know, I don't like to tell people what they should want, but if they know what they want, then they need to figure out what the policies are that back that up. And then they need to be asking people, getting that information from people before they just simply hand their vote over to them. And Santita, I know you're a big advocate of universal health care and a single-payer system. You know, a lot of people don't know or understand what that is. They don't even understand how our current system is, how it's set up, and how that drives, you know, all of this healthcare spending. We spend more money on healthcare than any of the developing world, and we have the unhealthiest people of all of the developed nations. So, you know, I just think people have to have that at the forefront, and they need to be a demand for those things if they align with their values. If they think that health and access to high-quality health care is a human right and not a privilege, that's the kind of demand you need to be for your elected officials, and those are the things you need to find out before you give them your vote.
And why don't we just start there? Start there, everybody, because we're in a pandemic still. We are. They're shutting down Philadelphia and restricting our movement and looking at vaccine passports and on and on and on. No one's talking to us about how to stop the spread. No one's really talking about treating people when they present with symptoms. It's all of these things. And what about people who are having to take the tests? The tests are becoming more and more expensive. I mean, I get it. I get it. You know, it's a lot. And we need to be asking these questions. Well, you know what, Attorney C.K. Hoffman, your senator, who we all claim because we love Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, brilliant, brilliant pastor, Morehouse man of Alpha Phi Alpha, he's going to let you know that first, all of that, and his parents' child. He said this: slavery was bipartisan, Jim Crow was bipartisan, the refusal of women's suffrage was bipartisan, the 3/5 compromise was bipartisan. When colleagues talk to me about bipartisanship, I ask, at whose expense? Who is being asked to foot the bill? Is liberty itself the cost? So yesterday, he just took to the floor. He said, look, you know what? We've had all this talk about the filibuster, and you know what? We've been unwilling to move the filibuster aside so that we can guarantee our voting rights. Police reform, build back better, all of that. He said, but when it came to the economy, we threw that over the side because we have got to make sure our legal tender is still legal and tender and can be used. Hey, what did you get from that? What was the takeaway yesterday for you?
Well, good morning, Santita. My takeaway yesterday was I am so proud to be a Georgian and that Senator Dr. Raphael Warnock is my senator. Mm-hmm. You know, he spoke truth to power. He put it and articulated exactly the way that many of us have been feeling about the hypocrisy of what's going on today. I want to say in general in government. Voting rights, policing reform were front center of what our president ran on. I do understand once you get into office, it is difficult to get certain things passed. We know we've had a horribly uncooperative U.S. Senate, and many of the senators, Republican bloc, have been blocking many of the things that our president wants to do. But there are some things that our president can do. And so what Senator Raphael Warnock was saying is enough is enough. Enough of this foolishness. When we want to get something done, we do what it takes to get the job done. So we must want to have voting rights in this country. He's saying, put your money where your mouth is. We know, I know, we all know, everybody knows how this administration got into office and who saved them. Now is the time to do what you said you were going to do, to have the backs of those people who got you in office, and just do it. Stop talking about it. Stop pontificating about it. Stop intellectualizing this discussion. Just do it. Voting rights, policing reform. These are the things that are, without them, our communities are dissipating, having a dramatic impact. So I was just at that moment listening to my senator. I could not have been prouder as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer. All the things that he said, you know, all of these cases that we're seeing, we're amidst the Kim Potter trial. We've seen for the murder of Dante Wright. We saw the Derek Chauvin's trial. We saw the McMichael, the Bryan trial. There's But there are hundreds of trials throughout the country that address the same issue, which begs the question, when are we going to get policing reform? We have voter suppression that is worse now than ever. The many conservatives have intensified their efforts to prevent many of us from voting. So he put it right there. So Santita, what I felt was, thank God that my senator stood up and said, all right, this is the time, and he picked a very strategic time. We need to do this and stop messing around.
Amen. I mean, Dwight McKee, your thoughts about this? He said slavery was bipartisan, Jim Crow, bipartisan, refusal of women's suffrage, bipartisan, the 3/5 compromise, bipartisan, and on and on. What about bipartisanship? I mean, are we supposed to be bipartisan at the expense of liberty?
Well, if you remember, I took that position a month ago. I said that if we were serious, we would threaten to close the government down when they were trying to get the budget passed. But, we act like bipartisan is not the issue. Is because the truth of the matter is that it's not the conservatives that don't want us to have democracy. It is the Democrats. It is the Democratic conservative arm of the Democratic Party does not want to have the democracy, because if they did, they could pass the legislation. They have the power right now if they decide to pass it. But they won't, because they use the conservatives as a pretext. But the fact of the matter is they don't want democracy because they live based by the lobbyists. They make their money from the lobbyists. They want the lobbyists in charge. And democracy is the biggest threat to the lobbyist system. What we really need is term limits. We need these guys to only be able to be a senator or congressman for 2 or 3 terms at a time. But these guys, when you make this a lifelong career, and this is your only source of income, then you live based on the prerogatives of extending your shelf life. That you can have a job for some of these for generations, because they pass these jobs on to their kids and their grandkids. In some cases, if we don't have a democracy, it's because we don't want a democracy. But the power has always been in the hands of the Democrats to do what they need to do to change the voting status.
Well, why haven't they done it? I mean, why?
Because they don't want it done. Because they don't want it done. Because they live based on the lobbyists.
And the corporations.
They're pushing for enough votes for them to get reelected, but not enough votes that they will do the will of the people. And so the fact of the matter is, just like they made an exception when they wanted to change the rules in order to get the budget extended, they at this point could, if they decided, change the rules to protect the democracy and to expand democracy. They don't do it because they don't want it done. And they hide, including Biden, they hide behind the conservatives, because if they really wanted it done, the conservatives wouldn't be an issue, just like they were an issue when they suspended the vote for
the debt limit.
Extended for the budget.
I mean, didn't even think about it. Just, we've got to save the money, got to save the economy. What about my vote? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. I want to know what your thoughts are. Should we just go on and have them while we still have the U.S. Senate, everybody? While we still have the majority in the House? Should they just say, hey, you know what? Forget this. We're going to take care of this because we ran on this. If we don't pass this, if we do not get our voting rights, if we don't get police reform, if we don't get Build Back Better, we're already in danger of losing Build Back Better, because CK and Dwight, Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin has said that I'm willing to work with you on Build Back Better, but we've got to end the child care tax credit. What? See, the progressives always said, I am not going to vote on this bipartisan infrastructure bill unless we pass these bills together, Build Back Better, and the infrastructure bill, they need to be passed at the same time. And that was the compromise. And I said, I knew we are jammed now. You cannot trust these people. Don't let them play with you. You play with a puppy, I told you, they'll lick you in the mouth. And I don't believe in cross-species love, C.K. Hoffler. I don't like it. And I feel us being played here as we're being gerrymandered out of power all across the country. Brian, what's on your mind today? Brian from Joliet?
Good morning.
Hey.
Good morning. First article, USW/work, fall 2014, death by filibuster, and Bring Jobs Home Act of 2014. Senate voted 54-32 to end debate on the bill. 6 short of the 60 votes needed to advance it. President Barack Obama had publicly supported this legislation. And what does it mean for today? Joe Biden is not going to end the filibuster. And he promised we were going to get the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure, and that was going to would get us House Bills H.R. 1, H.R. 4 to end voting suppression. Also do something about global warming, climate change, George Floyd Policing Reform Act, Violence Against Women Act. And my question is, when has the filibuster ever done any good for anyone except for those of the highest income?
What do you think should be done with the filibuster, Brian?
End it. I mean, Joe Biden should get rid of the filibuster so he can do what he promised to do.
What do you think is going to happen if he does not do that?
Well, my is I don't know. I don't think we're going to have fair and free elections for the midterms
and beyond. So, I mean, CK, why don't you speak to what Brian is saying? He's saying it's real simple. Just get rid of it, or certainly suspend it so we can get these bills through. CK, your thoughts?
I agree, Santita. I agree with Brian, what he's saying. Just let's get it done. We know we can do it. He's known he's had the power to do it. I think at this point he's got to go for broke because we're going to lose across the board in these midterm elections, and that is going to that is going to prevent him and preclude him from doing anything going forward. So if I were him, I'd go for broke because pass the thing, and perhaps we will, when people believe that you are exercising the power that we elected you to exercise, we have a chance of winning in these midterm elections. If you don't, they're going to think that he is weak, that he is violating his promises, and we're all going down, and the Democrats will no longer be in control. That's what's going to happen.
Well, Linda says she believes that Manchin and Sinema have been playing a stalling game from the beginning with the Build Back Better bill. I hope I'm wrong, but I never expected it to pass. I expected it to pass, but I know you can't play with these people if you want it to pass. Politics is not a game for children. And it's not a game for people who have thin skin. You get on that field, you're going to get knocked out. You're going to get bloody. You're going to be all of those things, but you need to walk away with a win. And that is not happening right now. In the Congress, Democrats represent, we are there by the slimmest of majorities. We represent more than 4 million people, 4 million more people than the Republicans. In the Senate, the numbers are even greater, 7 million people. The 50 Democrats in the U.S. Senate represent 7 million plus more people than the Republicans do, and we act like losers. I don't get it, Dwight. I just don't understand it.
Again, it's not hard to understand, Santita. It's who you represent. I told you before, don't ever confuse your party with who you represent. The people in office don't represent the people. They represent, for the most part, corporate interests and those who are supplying them the money to run. That's who they're accountable to. They're accountable to lobbyists and special interests. And so they make their decisions based on that. They don't make their decisions based on who they represent. They make, or who votes for them. They make their decisions based on who can give them enough money to run again and become reelected again, because these become lifetime jobs. And these people who were there for 20 years and 25 years and would not have these kind of privileges or this kind of income in any other situation, their only interest is protecting their long-range jobs. And so there's always at the expense of democracy, because that's what they're going to protect first. If they got a choice between you and your radio show, and even though you impact listeners, and the head of IBM and the $10 million fund that he can draw upon, who do you think he's going to choose? Where do you think his money is going to come from? And who do you think he's going to vote with? They're not for democracy. They don't want democracy. They want a lifetime job and access to enough money to get them there. Otherwise, you see different behavior. And these are Democrats and Republicans alike.
Well, before we go to the break, I want to bring on one of our callers. Is it Azalee? I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. If not, please correct me.
Yes, it is Azalee.
Miss Azalee, how you doing? What's on your mind today?
Yes. Well, a lot is on my mind. One of the things that we have to remember is whether it's a Democrat or Republican, the basic foundation of this country is racism. I mean, I'm not calling anybody, any person, a racist, but that's the foundation of the country. So that when we see politicians doing the things that they do, and we're wondering why, whether they Democrat or whether they're the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, racist. And we have to remember that it doesn't mean you hate people, anything like. But we have to recognize the truth, like Dr. Raphael did.
And like I think the.
And so when we're saying, well, why aren't they doing this way or that way, it's because that's your basis. If they do what they need to do, then this will defeat the racism. And so they don't really want, I mean, all of them. I really, I look at the parties and I see there is a difference in, their focus, the difference in the Republicans, and it's money. I know the Democrats, they want money from the money people too, but the Republicans are better at that. They get the most money. So that's that. But as far as trying to govern the nation in a democratic way, small d, both of those groups have that racist thing that they are dealing with. And we just have to realize that. Like I said, you don't hate people, but you recognize the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I have been wondering about, and to me this is also dealing with racism, why are we worried about whether or not Donald Trump will run and win in the next presidential election?
Hold that thought. Miss Azalee, Miss Azalee, hold on one moment. I've got to go to my break. But we'll answer that on the other side of the break. We will answer that. We'll speak to that, or at least we'll speak to it. I don't know if we'll have any answers, but we can certainly speak to it. I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. What about ending or suspending the filibuster so we can get voting rights through, build back better through, police reform through? What about that? Shouldn't we do that? We did it for the debt limit. Think about that. And what about President Trump? I just read an opinion piece that says that Hillary 2024 versus President Trump, former President Trump, just might be the ticket because the Democrats' bench is not that deep. What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Miss Azalee, is she still there?
She actually no, she just dropped.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, I mean not good, but okay. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I put her on hold.
No, it's okay. I
I
mean,
guess
she
she just
probably
hung up,
thought
so.
that wasn't you. It was just her. Because it was also the commercial, and she probably said, "Okay, they're not going to talk to me," which is not true. I'll talk to everybody during the break. That's what we love to do. Dwight and Dr. Verholden, are you still there? She might be.
She's still on the line.
Yeah, I'm here. I gotta hop off soon, but I'm here.
Do you want to make a comment on the other side?
I'm just listening.
When you say it like that, I just know there's something else going on in your mind. But that's all right. I'm just listening. Oh, please. This woman is too serious, brilliant. And there you go. We're on with Dr. D, the other Dr. D, and attorney C.K. Hoffler.
Hey, Dr. Deborah.
Hey, good morning. The original Dr. D.
From back in the day. That's right.
Yes.
Well, that's what we call him here in Chicago. Everybody who knows him, that's what we call him, Dr. D. Dr. D. But it's a lot. But I'm so glad that he took to the floor to say something about this. I am so glad.
How's India?
India is like the most delicious, joyful little thing on the whole planet. She's wonderful. She is wonderful. I'm telling you, I forgot. I feel like when I had kids, I was like,
Mr. Daly is ready as well.
I was, at sometimes getting through it. With her, I just savor all of it. I savor all of it, man. It's like the most awesome thing ever. Way better than I ever thought it would be. Yeah.
That is so sweet. Oh man, but that's what happens with grandparents. When Bill Cosby had the most hilarious routine about that. He was like, he said, I remember coming in, my children would be acting out. And my mother was like, oh, look at that precious baby. And he was like, this is not the woman who raised me, you guys. She is not the same.
Right?
That ain't the same woman. No. Oh,
Right.
it was hilarious to me then, but it is absolutely hilarious now. Because I see my parents. My mother's like, oh, I want to get this little thing. This is so precious. I said, oh. This is the same woman who told me at 12 years of age, this is the last Christmas for you, honey. Now, we're not going to do Christmas like this anymore. Because this is Jesus' birthday, and I want you to remember that. So this is it. No more Christmas gifts under the tree for you.
Christmas gifts in my house. We bought no gifts except for India, and she could care absolutely less.
Absolutely. Well, I'm over it now.
Stuff we didn't already open. Yeah, it's like.
Excuse me. It was 100 years ago. But it was like, okay.
It's cool though. She's very curious. I love it. I'm like. They used to say, oh, that baby's so busy. And I'm like, no, she's just curious. She's like taking it all in and learning it all, And now I know better. It's like, turn your computer off, Dad. Just be with the baby. She's curious. Help her explore. You get curious, too. She is like the dopest thing in my life.
Oh, bless her. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. Well, just as we thought it would be, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Oh boy.
Miss Jackson, just making sure here. You wanted the clip after the song again, right?
Absolutely.
The intro song.
And thank you for checking again. Absolutely.
Copy that.
Yes. Thank you so much. David Daly. David.
Again, he's up.
Okay, David.
Hello. How are you?
How is my brother doing today? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm better. I got a good night's sleep, so I'm ready to try again today.
Okay, bless your heart. Okay, just checking because I hope I made it really clear that if you couldn't make it on, it was going to be okay. We want to miss you, but
no, I'm good. I got yesterday wouldn't have worked, but today works.
Okay. Well, we've got C.K. Hoffler on, attorney C.K. Hoffler, and we've got Dr. D, Dwight McKee, and Dr. Deborah Verholden's going to stay with us just for a couple more minutes. She's just been listening.
Love it. All my favorite people.
Oh, You are ours. So this is wonderful. Woo! Okay, everybody. Okay. 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 Oh boy. Oh, CK, what about bell hooks, huh? Ooh, broke my heart.
Yep, I just had you on mute. Absolutely.
Ooh. I remember going to some of her lectures when I was in college, back in the day. You know, she was very young, and it was like she was exciting, and it's always wonderful when you have these professors. Oh, thank you. Who take things out of the books and make them real for you, right? And she was one of those persons. Wow, how brilliant. Whew, bless her heart. I had no idea she had been ill. Had no idea.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Okay, 15 seconds.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. We're talking about the vote today. Matt, let's bring up that clip.
Democrats have tried again and again to engage our Republican friends in a discussion on this issue, one that lies at the foundation of our democracy. And time again, because of a lack of good faith engagement, the rules of the Senate have prevented us from moving that conversation forward. We could not imagine changing the rules, that is, until last week. Because last week, we did exactly that. Be very clear, last week, we changed the rules of the Senate to address another important issue, the economy. This is a step, a change in the Senate rules we haven't been willing to take to save our broken democracy, but one that a bipartisan majority of this chamber thought was necessary in order to keep our economy strong. We changed the rules to protect the full faith and credit of the United States government. We've decided we must do it for the economy, but not for the democracy.
What do you think about that, everybody? That was Georgia Senator Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, really lending his prophetic voice to this fight for our voting rights. We have been saying we've elected the Biden-Harris ticket and Democrats all over the country in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives so that we could get our voting rights secured after they were gutted by the Supreme Court almost 10 years ago. Well, actually more than 10 years ago. And so now, what are we doing? We're saying that the parliamentarian is saying we can't do this. And we've got the filibuster. We've got to get 60 votes. We can't get that. No. But when it came to saving the economy, oh no. We said, you know what we've got to do? We've got to, that is what's most important, our money and not our vote. So I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number. I want to know your thoughts about the filibuster and your voting rights and Build Back Better. Senator Joe Manchin is saying, I'm willing to get Build Back Better if we end the child care tax credit. They are just stripping everything away. that ought to be unacceptable to you. So we're talking with attorney C.K. Hoffler, immediate past president of the National Bar Association, brilliant lawyer and chair of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And we're talking with Dr. D, National Action Network and Rainbow Push, and a brilliant social scientist. And of course, we have New York Times bestselling author of Rat Effed and Unrigged from Fair Vote, our beloved David Daly. I want to know what everybody's thoughts are. Now, Chicago will have a high of 60 degrees, cloudy, high winds. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 27 degrees, high winds. We are having high wind advisories, everybody. I don't know what you heard last night, but I thought my windows were going to break. We're going to just bust wide open. The Dow closed up 383 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 327 points. The S&P 500 closed up 75 points. And in the NBA, of course, we still have postponed games because of the COVID protocols with the Chicago Bulls. But last night, the Timberwolves were triumphant over the Nuggets, 124-107. In the NFL tonight, the Chiefs will be facing off against the Chargers. And in the NHL, well, Chicago was triumphant over the Capitals, 5-4. And the Wild will be playing the Sabres tonight, dedicating the show to the great feminist thinker, author, academician, brilliant intellectual Bell Hooks. Made her transition at the age of 69. Someone said something so profound yesterday when we found out about her having transitioned. We are a lesser world because she is no longer in it. And we thank God for this body of work that she gave us, and which she gave voice to the least of these, particularly to Black people and most particularly to Black women. We thank God for Bell Hooks today. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a man, a veteran whose killing really kicked off the Selma movement that gave us our right to vote. How ironic, thank you, Kevin, that we would be talking about this today, as we watch the coronavirus numbers spike, everybody, in the United States. We're bracing for a trio of threats, they say, this winter. The Omicron coronavirus variant and the flu and COVID-19 cases. They're rising. And really, the Delta variant is the one that is bedeviling us here. So everybody, please pay attention to Dr. Shanina Knight and go to Dr. Nina, Dr. Nina, Preventionist on Instagram so that you can see these wonderful short snippets where she can show you how to wash your hands and the things of which you should be mindful as we are moving around here, everybody. Build Back Better is being threatened. It turns out Senator Joe Manchin has said, well, okay, I'm willing to pass it as long as we get rid of the child care tax credit. Now, mind you, this is after he, for the 11th time, voted to give hundreds of billions of dollars to the military. Hundreds of billions of dollars. He just did that a week ago or so. So let's get to our guest. Let me start with you, David Daly. We've been hearing from Dr. D, Dwight McKee, and attorney C.K. Hoffler about these words from Senator Warnock yesterday, in which he said, basically, you all need to get up off of it. And we need to just be clear on what bipartisan is. This is what he said, bipartisanship. He said, quote, slavery was bipartisan. Jim Crow was bipartisan. The refusal of women's suffrage was bipartisan. The 3/5 compromise was bipartisan. When colleagues talk to me about bipartisanship, I ask, at whose expense? Who is being asked to foot the bill? Is liberty itself the cost? Your thoughts about him calling on Democrats to suspend the filibuster and get voting rights through. What do you think about that?
It is a must. And what the senator said yesterday was profound and passionate and entirely right on. We have created intentionally over the course of the 250 years of this nation structure after structure that allows for white rule. And that is really what the filibuster is all about. It's why the filibuster was created. It's really a tool that was designed to stop civil rights. When you look at the structure of the U.S. Senate and how states were admitted, the U.S. Senate, its entire structure favoring small, rural, white states is a creation of slavery and the Civil War. And that entire moment. And when we became when we took the first steps towards trying to become a multiracial democracy with the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965 and tried to fulfill the promise of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that followed the Civil War, but also led to an era of Jim Crow as they were, as states across the South, and some in the North as well, worked to enact poll taxes and literacy tests. So many other things that, and let alone the violence and the threats and the intimidation that kept Black Americans from the polls, that in so many counties across the South, before the Voting Rights Act, you had 1% Black registration. And when the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013 guts Section 5 pre-clearance of the Voting Rights Act by claiming that the South is a different place, that the nation in 2013 is not what the nation had been in 1965. To the extent that that was the case, it was because pre-clearance and the Voting Rights Act were doing what it was supposed to be doing. And Justice Ginsburg laid this out so clearly in her famous dissent. She said, you don't go out, you don't throw away your umbrella in the middle of a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. It's the umbrella that's protecting you. It's what's keeping you dry. And we threw that umbrella aside, and we have seen what has happened across the course of this last almost decade now, whether it's the voter ID bills, whether it's the precinct closures, whether it's the voter roll purges, whether it's the gerrymandering that's taking place this cycle without the protection of Section 5, whether it is all of these laws we are seeing in so many of these gerrymandered states now that are trying to take election administration and certification procedures away from counties and give them to these gerrymandered legislatures. We are in the last days of this era of our democracy as we know it. And if the U.S. Senate cannot find a way to get past these rules that have entrenched white supremacy in this nation for so long, we are going to be heading towards something very different. We're going to be heading towards an entrenched and durable Republican minority rule that this country will not be able to shake for a generation.
What do you think, everybody? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Should the filibuster be ended or suspended to secure our voting rights? Indeed, Congressman Jamal Bowman says this is a false choice. We can get all of this legislation through. Just get rid of the filibuster, because you know what, David, this was the fear of the progressives. They said if we don't pass the bipartisan so-called infrastructure bill and Build Back Better together, we're not going to get what we came here for. And that's exactly what's happened. Now we see Senator Manchin saying, okay, we can do Build Back Better, but we have the child care tax credit. This, for the 11th time, he has given the military hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions. He's done it 11 times. So, I mean, so what do you say? Do you think that we're going to see some movement now that Senator Warnock has cast down the gauntlet?
I think it entirely depends on Senator Manchin. I mean, you have got effectively 48 Democratic senators who are lined up for this, and you've got Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema from Arizona who have not been willing to change the filibuster rule in order to enact legislation that not only does a majority of the Senate support, because Joe Manchin wrote this bill. I mean, it's not that Joe Manchin doesn't support this bill. It's that Joe Manchin doesn't want to change the rules of this body in order to pass legislation that we so desperately need to protect this country at this dire existential moment in our history. I would also say that there are 50 Republicans in this U.S. Senate, and we should not be giving them a pass on their unwillingness to work on this issue in the slightest. Where even on this are the pretend moderates? Where's Mitt Romney on this? Where is Lisa Murkowski? Where is Susan Collins? The fact that you have an entire political party, and I think this is just as important as the attention that is being paid to Joe Manchin. We have right now an entire, one of our two major political parties has taken such an authoritarian turn that they are unwilling to protect basic voting rights that were so uncontroversial back in 2006 that the extension of the Voting Rights Act passes the U.S. Senate unanimously, 98-0, and clears the U.S. House controlled by Republicans 390-27. So this wasn't controversial in 2006. 15 years later, one of our two parties has taken such a radical authoritarian turn that they not only will not support these issues, but they are working actively at the state legislative level around the country to enact brutal suppression tactics and to change the very nature of how we administer and certify elections. All of this coming after what we saw on January 6th, in which elected members of this party, as becomes more and more clear every day, attempted to propagate a coup.
Pam from Chicago, what are your thoughts?
Good morning, Santita and guests.
Good morning, Pam.
I'm feeling, blow the filibuster up, whatever you need to do. And it seems to me that Joe Biden, he was supposed to be the Republican whisperer, right? He was supposed to work with them and get them together, right? Remember that?
Right.
And that's just a play on the horse whisperer.
Girl, I know. I just had to pull myself together and not
being the Republican, being the Republican whisperer that he is.
That's right. He's going to talk to the Republicans. All right. He can talk to them. He can say things to them that no one else can say. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
So, Santita, but my concern is, why doesn't he see the urgency in this? Now, I see that Vice President Harris has made some comments, but talk is cheap at this point, and we need direct action. And I don't, for me, Santita, I've already said I believe the Republican Party has, just turned into a Republican Party hate group. Now, that's not to say that everyone's in it, but that leadership under Trump is following a fascist, racist regime.
Well, Pam, but hold on. Then what do you say about a Democratic Party that will not fight for you, particularly when you elected them to do these things that you want them to do? What do you say about that?
Oh, well, let me talk about that. Now, we're talking about the Democratic Party and the moderates, right?
No, we're just talking about a party that will not take a stand on your voting rights, on Build Back Better, on police reform, on all the things that we gave them these 80 million votes for.
Well, it seems like the progressive part of the party has taken a stand on it. Or do we think they need to do something additionally? But I'm seeing the moderates and those people just stand against changing the filibuster. They won't repeal any laws that the Republicans passed in legislation that hurt us. What are they willing to do? Because we are already putting our lives on the line, protesting, getting killed, trying to organize against these white supremacist groups. So I'm in agreement, Santita. The Democratic Party as a whole needs to speak out more, and not only that, but do more. It is really time for action. And I blow up the filibuster, carve it out, whatever needs to get done to get these pieces of legislation passed. We need the Voting Rights Act. Now, if Joe Manchin doesn't want to support it, can someone get him publicly to say why? I'm not interested in Republican bipartisanship if they're not willing to do the right thing. Bipartisanship is not that important to me. And I'm not concerned, well, if we blow it up, what happens when they get on? Do what we need to do now to protect the people and the voting rights
and get your messaging together, and I think we can win this thing in 2022 and 2024.
Well, we'll deserve to win. We'll deserve to win. I think that if we don't do it, then we don't deserve to win. You can't continue to reward people who don't come through for you.
I agree.
That's crazy.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement.
I mean, Dwight, you know, when you made that point, it sounded like you wanted to storm the Bastille. I've got a couple of minutes before we go to break. What do you think?
Well, I said then that if we were serious, we had the option, Black Caucus then had the option to say that unless you all pass these bills first, then we won't vote on the budget. We'll let the country go bankrupt, and we'll let the federal government go broke. And how you like them apples? But we are not willing to fight at every cost, at every level, for our own freedom and our own democracy. We always put other people's interests first. And the only way that you can deal with this kind of situation, in my opinion, is democratize the pain. Everybody has to have something to lose. Everybody has to have something on the line. And if you say to the country, oh, either all of us are going to be free or none of us are going to be free. Either all of us going to have a piece of the pie or it's not going to be any pie. You won't see any progress made. We have the opportunity to do it again because the vote is going to come up again because the government in 3 or 4 months is going to run short again and need to borrow some more money. And if the Democrats are serious, including the Black Caucus, they will say, unless you pass this legislation first, then you won't get our vote. Then let the country go broke. Let the people run to the Bastille and close it and put us on the lynching post and say, let them eat cake. Let the people, when they don't have enough money to pay their own bills and the army don't have enough money to pay their rent, and it becomes a real crisis, then let it be. Unless all of us are free, none of us should be free.
Everybody, what do you think about that? Adding on to this, we have got the Omicron variant. We're going to have Dr. Max Wolf on with us in a hot second just to talk about that. There's so much to talk about today. But it's the politics, everybody. The politics are driving this. We are in 2022, everybody. These are the final weeks, David, of 2021. We are now in the election season. We are going to see what's going to happen with Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Well, first of all, we need to see what's going to happen with Mr. Perdue and Governor Kemp. What's going to happen there? What's going to happen all around the country? What will happen if the Democrats don't push for the things that we elected them to do? What about Build Back Better? Do you want the child care tax credit to be eliminated? That's what Joe Manchin is saying. Look, I'll vote for it if we end that. Really? We should never have passed that bipartisan bill without twinning it with Build Back Better. That was always the point. And we knew these people were not going to be honest, and they have not behaved in a noble way. They have not. And look at where we are. Well, hopefully we'll learn a lesson this time. So let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-WCPT. We'll be talking about this and Omicron, just everything on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, everybody, we're mixing everything up, but you still there, CK?
I'm still here.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get right to it. Whew, it's just so much. I don't even know what to tell you. It's so much. I was so glad to see him say that, though, CK. I must tell you, I was like thrilled. But I know he has got to be wondering what the ham sandwich is all of this, because he knows he got a tough fight on his hands too, right?
He really does. I mean, I don't know that Herschel Walker's a formidable opponent, but I will say this: we can take nothing for granted, because at the last minute there could be somebody who's put up against Raphael Warnock who could make some noise. And with, he's got to come back to his constituents, and when they ask about voting rights and policing, because these are the things that are critical to Georgia, that would have, remember in Georgia we watched the McMichaels and Bryant trial surrounding the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and that had, the result of there were convictions across the board, but that brought to the surface the need for policing reform in Georgia. So people and voting rights. How about your voting rights? The need for voting rights legislation. So we just had a mayoral election, and it appears that given that all the candidates were really black for all intents and purposes, there was no voter suppression that we noted per se, because black on top of black on top of black, it didn't appear that there was a need to really put in place voter suppression the way that will happen during the midterm elections. So I think Raphael Warnock has to be able to, he's been preaching this, it just seems alone. I'm sure there are others that join in support and solidarity with him, but he has come out and just put it the way it is. And that is important for Georgians. And I don't think it's just that he campaigned on that. He's been consistent in the U.S. Senate on that. And now he's saying it. And it's, it really these shouldn't even be bipartisan issues. The right to vote, the ability to vote should not be a partisan issue. Having, protecting the citizens from excessive use of force and police and protecting some of the police. The good policemen. That should not be a bipartisan issue. We should want to have our communities be safe. Crime statistics in this country are, I don't need to tell you, Santita, living in Chicago, but they are unbelievable. And cities like Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, Los Angeles, key urban areas, the crime statistics are simply unbelievable. Crime is seeping into all communities. This is, again, a reason why the need to have reforms, policing and criminal justice reform, should be something that people just embrace, because it's going into all of our communities.
Well, hold on. Hold on, CK. Dr. Wolf, you there? Dr. Wolf? Is Dr. Wolf there? Oh, hey. Yeah, okay. I'm just checking. Oh, no, of course. We've been talking about so much, so we're going to mix Omicron up with everything. We
get ready for the boring.
No.
Can't wait to bring the boring.
No, stay right there. Stay right there.
30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. 10 seconds.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Let's hear Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, U.S. Senator from the great state of Georgia. Matt, let's hear him one more time.
Democrats have tried again and again to engage our Republican friends in a discussion on this issue, one that lies at the foundation of our democracy. And time again, because of a lack of good faith engagement, the rules of the Senate have prevented us from moving that conversation forward. We could not imagine changing the rules, that is, until last week. Because last week, we did exactly that. Be very clear, last week, we changed the rules of the Senate to address another important issue, the economy. This is a step, a change in the Senate rules we haven't been willing to take to save our broken democracy, but one that a bipartisan majority of this chamber thought was necessary in order to keep our economy strong. We changed the rules to protect the full faith and credit of the United States government. We've decided we must do it for the economy, but not for the democracy.
We've been talking about that with you. Want to know what your thoughts are, and of course, we've been looking at this at this Omicron variant, which thankfully is proving to be not as virulent, but highly transmissible, everybody, but not as deadly, and by a long shot, as the Delta variant, which is still the predominant variant that is killing people. And we've got to do better with treatment, everybody, with therapeutics. When people first present themselves, we have got to begin to get people the treatment immediately. We've got to get people access to vaccines. We've got to get access to the global, the global treatments. Global treatments, because a lot of people who've gotten vaccinated, now they have it. So they have COVID. So what are we going to do? We've got to get our infection preventionists in this discussion so that we can know how to stop the spread, so that we can find out in ways great and small how we can really keep ourselves safe. I've got Chaparral Wells. Chaparral, so many of you are trying to get this food in. You're trying to get these last-minute orders in with celebrations by us. Before we go to Dr. Maxwell, what's on your mind today, Chaparral? I know people are calling you.
Yes, they are, and I am so appreciative, Santita, of this great blessing that we are receiving. And I just want to let everyone know that tomorrow, the 17th, is our last day to take orders for Christmas. We're asking everyone to give us a call prior to 5 p.m. so that way we can ensure you that you'll have your Christmas dinner ready for you. So we're making your Christmas ham, your Christmas roast, as well as also your smothered chicken, smothered beef, mac and cheese, masticholi, Cajun pasta, greens and green beans, as well as also our peach cobbler, our caramel cake, our red velvet cake, German chocolate cake, pound cake, and our Christmas cookies. So please don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. That's 708-526-4546. And we look forward to serving you. Thank you, Santita.
No, of course, everybody go on and please place that order by tomorrow, Chaparral, because we remember Roosevelt, and we have to have fun with Roosevelt. He called like the day before Thanksgiving. What happened, Chaparral?
Yes, he called before Thanksgiving. He wanted a whole meal. So Roosevelt, you still have time, so give us a call. And I had got a couple of calls this morning, so I'm very, very happy. So I just want everyone to know that we are happy to serve you this holiday season. And before I let you go, Santita, I know I have to weigh in on this topic because it's driving me crazy. And I just wanted to say that President Biden is who we thought he was. He is a moderate right Democrat, and he is a corporatist. And so we know that he does not believe in the agenda. Even though he made all these promises to the American people, we know that they were disingenuous. And we know that he had no intention of supporting a progressive bill. But I don't give him the onus of this problem right now. Just like Reverend Warnock stated, this will affect democracy across the board. So every Democrat, every Republican should be concerned. And when we have Joe Manchin, who is in West Virginia, one of the poorest states in the country, preventing the child tax credit from exceeding when his people are benefited the greatest, we know that he is not advocating for his constituents. So I think that this winter break, that everybody who believes in this type of democracy, we need to hit the areas and hit them where it hurts. I definitely agree with Dwight that the progressives, as well as also the Black Caucus, should hold out on voting for any other bills that the Democrats are trying to pass until the George Floyd Act passed, the Voting Rights Act passed, as well as also Build Back Better, because we have to stand for something or we will fall for everything. Thank you, Santita.
Whew, well, mic drop on that. And we're in the midst of a pandemic still. We act like we're not. Please, professional sports have almost been shut down because of COVID outbreaks on these teams or on the staffs, everybody. We've got Dr. Max Wolf. We've got a lot to talk about today. Got a lot of ground to cover and people who are calling in about everything. Dr. Wolf, your thoughts?
Great to be with you. And I think one thing I would add just is that it's a little early to know exactly whether or not the cases will be mild. We certainly hope so, and there's some initial indication of that.
Well, they're saying that out of South Africa. That's only I'm basing it on the people who've been living with this for a minute. This is what they've been warning us, because when they had their travel restrictions instituted, they said, wait a minute, this is travel apartheid. This is what President Ramaphosa from South Africa said. He said, first of all, it started in Belgium, and the cases that we're seeing, thankfully, at this time are mild. And look, I'm looking for any kind of daylight I can find in this pandemic, because we have lost 800,000 people here.
Yeah, officially, and probably more.
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I would just say that it's mild in people who are young and have either already had COVID or had 2 vaccine shots.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of the story of where it's mild is that it's mild if you're young, otherwise healthy, and have already had COVID and 1 or 2 shots, or have already had 2 or 3 shots. Which is why it's a little bit scary, because there's still a lot of folks who can't check all those boxes, right? No, not to say it's necessarily their fault that they can't check them all, right? It's hard to blame someone for their age or their health or such decisions like that. But just saying, people need to be a bit careful about that. I mean, I think the other issue here is that COVID has a lot of dimensions, right?
Mm-hmm.
In an ideal world, COVID could have brought us together to solve a common problem in which one person's success is completely driven by the actions of another person, right? Because there's community transmission. And the term community transmission is not some sort of technical phrase. It's true, right? So communities are either safe together or not, right? And so it's the absolute condition in which if what you do saves your neighbor's life or ends it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people have chosen door number 2, end it, right? And they continue to. And as these waves come, it reminds us that these waves are bigger because we aren't taking care of each other. Well, there's lots of ways that goes. One of them is the Western countries hoarding vaccines. So we have...
God bless you.
It's not my Omicron acting up. In any case, we have some countries hoarding lots of extra shots, unable to give them away, and other countries desperate for shots, with people waiting online 12 hours a day for 3 days and collapsing of exhaustion trying to get a shot, right? So the global distribution is poor. Some of the education and communication around this in lots of countries, this one included, has left something to be desired, right? I mean, it's a difficult task, but it's maybe room for improvement is substantial, I think. And people just can't get their minds around taking care of each other. They can't wear a piece of fabric over their face, right? Because they just don't want to, or they want to show that they're tough, or they want to bring someone else down, or they want to show how much they don't care about their fellow human, whatever it is.
But you know what, Max, hold on.
Worried about something else.
I think we also have to, also just really point out the fact that the messaging initially was very, very poor. We even had Dr. Fauci tell us, not just confusing, it was poor, and it was misleading. Not just confusing, it was misleading. He knew we needed masks, and then he told us we didn't need them because they were trying to, and that's noble. You're trying to get the people who are on the front line, their PPEs, you're trying to get them masks, but tell me I need a mask. I'll make my own. I'll come up with something. So much of the narrative has shifted. And like in Africa, you have 6% on the continent of people who are vaccinated. And many of them are not moving because Africa and India have been places that have been subject to experimentation. I think that if we don't talk about those issues, we're not going to get anywhere. We just, and I think so that's when equity has to come into the discussion, and different people's experiences with the medical industrial complex. And I think that if we can have an honest, earnest conversation and not label people, then we can get somewhere. Because nobody likes walking around like this. No, I don't want to go into year 3 of a pandemic, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're going into a year 3 of a potentially worsening pandemic, right? Which is, I mean, not to lard on the negativity, but people do have to kind of figure out if it's worth it, though, right? So lots of truth to what you're saying, but you can't, even if it is the government's communication strategy that leaves a lot to be desired, it's still you in that coffin.
Yeah.
Right? Or your neighbor, or your grandmother, or your mom, or your sister, or your son, right? They're not going to get in the box for you because they made the mistake. So you still have to figure out how to take care of yourself and your community. I do think there's an opportunity here, and that's not to be Pollyannish. I think I've established myself on your show as probably not that much of a raging Pollyanna in general. Look, there is a chance to step up, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, if you wear that mask on the bus, you're telling everybody on that bus that you care about yourself and you care about them. If you keep a little bit of distance from someone, if you check up on someone, if you clean up a little better, it's a chance.
Yeah.
It's a chance to be an everyday hero, right?
Look, I completely agree with you. But we're having these little fights amongst ourselves. You know, people who are vaccinated. I have so many around me who say, look, I do not need to wear the mask. And they become angry when you ask them to do that. It's not just the unvaccinated. No. I found that to be far more the case. I found that far more with people who have been vaccinated. I'm tired of it. I'm trying to find out, because last year, before we got these shots, we started flattening the curve. Because we were cleaning our hands, we were having the appropriate physical distance. We started wearing the mask. We really started making some inroads here. And I'm saying I think that we have to take all of the things that we have learned in the past and move them forward. It's not just a one and done.
And by the way, washing your hands and wearing that mask has external benefits. Even if you don't believe in COVID, right? Even if you think COVID is a 5G chip from China, from Bill Gates, from the Democratic Party, invented by Joe Biden's love triangle with Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, where they were all born in Kenya, you still might want to wash the crap off your hands after you go to the bathroom.
Oh, thank you, Max. Thank you.
Or not breathe in my face and not have me breathe in yours. Like, that still seems like a win.
Say OMG. OMG.
Go on, CK. CK, were you on mute?
I was on mute, but I
was just shocked that I discovered.
OMG. All right, I'm going back on mute. Thank you.
Oh my gosh!
I tried to capture all of them in one.
Oh my! Look, let me tell you. Look, we try to touch it all on the Santita Jackson show.
I got my Omicron from RFK Jr. when I was right behind him in line at Burger King when Elvis served us both and coughed.
But you know what? I'd even like to talk to Robert Kennedy. I would. Because I don't think that
he's been. There might be some challenges there.
No, it would be fine. I mean, the thing is, I'm open to talking to people. I think that's part of the problem we've got now.
The conspiracy theory is John F. K. Jr. I think talking to him might be very difficult.
Well, I mean, I would still like to try, because I'm from that side of the aisle. And let me tell you something: as a black person in America, I've not been able to shut anyone out. I had to live on a plantation with someone I had to have babies by, who called me 3/5 of a human. I've had to figure it out, and that's what we do. Got to do it, because he has.
I'm not arguing against talking to anyone. I think a lot of these people believe that JFK Jr. isn't dead, is coming back to run for president with Donald Trump,
and that's
and
that's his cousin.
But I believe you might have a hard time talking to him unless you too have contacts on the other side of the vanity in your bathroom mirror.
But you know what? I don't know that, because I haven't talked to him yet, and I would like to do that, and I'd like to talk. I don't like to talk about people. We'll talk about you, but I'd like to talk to you, talk with you, and I'd like to understand at least where you're coming from, even if I oppose your views. I don't know it until I've talked to you. I don't know. I mean, come on. I was a commentator at Fox News. Hey. So let me bring a couple of these callers in. Stay right there. Robert from Wisconsin. We're going to mix it up a bit. Robert, what's on your mind? Are you there, Robert?
I guess I'd say, first of all, Yes, I'm here. I'm glad that we're doing some commerce on the show. That Chappelle is on there, kind of promoting her business and what they do. I'll have you know, like my wife and I invested in aerial investment funds that Jane Cannon or you or the chairman, John, on, and we love their social bent for the investment, and the investments have done wonderful. It's been terrific. So
he's great.
Thank you for bringing him on. And kind of,
brilliant guy.
For that.
Brilliant guy. Brilliant guy.
So, yeah. I guess comments on the filibuster. I mean, the Senate rules are so arbitrary, right? We know Joe Manchin has fossil fuel interest. Yeah, he's going to vote or hold his vote on something involving climate, right, and clean energy. Massive conflict of interest. It's a violation of Senate rules. I think the Democrats just need to smarten up. We saw this nonsense under Harry Reid. He was such a fighter, but he would never change the rules, and they get steamrolled and everything. Really, Chuck Schumer needs to step up, use his brain, and if for no other reason, I mean, they should do it for their own self-interest. Their elections are going to be so much harder when the midterms come if they let these guys gerrymander everything. And then, the second thing I'd say is people really need to support Raphael Warnock and Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, some of the real progressives. There's a lot of people that call themselves progressives in that party. But what we've seen from Ro Khanna and Crimea Jayapal, she tried, but, they're too willing to go along. Biden's not a perfect candidate. We knew that going into election. I will say he's got a lot done, and he's involved quite a bit. As a progressive, I was very critical of him when he was a nominee. But he's gotten more done than Trump had when he had the House and the Senate and everything. So when I listen to the media, I kind of scratch my head. I'm like, I don't know what the hell you people are talking about. He's accomplished way more than Donald Trump did at the same point in his presidency. And he hasn't had the same kind of majority, in the House or Senate. And then, finally, we probably need to go to West Virginia. Those real progressives that are out there, they need to apply some pressure. Let's stop playing nice with these guys. If they're corrupt, let's call them corrupt.
Okay. Look, I am totally feeling you. I'm sending you much love, Robert. And you know what? If you want to reach out to Chappelle and get one of those wonderful cakes or some of that great food, which I'm going to do by tomorrow, call 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. Sending you and your wife and your family much love. Renee from Chicago, what's on your mind today? You want to talk to Dr. Wolf about the pandemic?
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for taking my call. I wear a mask and I wear a shield every place I go. In a world that has a lot of maskless people out there, I wash my hands frequently and I use hand sanitizer, so my hands are dry. And the virus is real. I know it's real. I don't know the origins of the virus. And when I look at our government and how, like Reverend Warnock said, they can get together for economic reasons, but not get together to help the people and to help my people specifically with civil rights, with human rights, so we don't just get killed at the whim of somebody and they get away with it. When I think about that, it makes me go back to the virus, to the connected people with these people in Congress and the government who made a whole lot of money off these vaccines. I look at Moderna and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, who has made so much money off of this vaccine. They make so much money daily off of this vaccine that they force people to get, while they have not forced people or even strongly encouraged people to wear masks, to wash their hands frequently. It makes me wonder, is the motive for profit, or is it to save lives? And it seems to me like it's like everything else that this country has done historically, is to make money for the same people who may be descendants of the people who made money off my ancestors. My great-grandmother was born into slavery. So it ended when she was 8 years old. My father went through Jim Crow. He was born in 1918. My father told me stories about slavery in Arkansas when he was alive. It's where they would snatch people for this farm that was there, the Wilson Farm. A country, a government that would let that stuff happen to people and then make laws to incarcerate us with these war on drugs and stuff. This country has shown no love for us, and through this pandemic, the majority of the people here dying are people who look like me. And in those countries where we won't give them vaccines, they look like me too. So I don't know what's in the vaccine. I hope it's not targeting our DNA. But this country has shown us no love, and it's not just Tuskegee where they watch people suffer with syphilis. It's a country that has experimented on pregnant black women at Vanderbilt University, that has watched young black boys die in the street instead of giving them the aid they need. It's a country where, I know in Chicago, my daughter's godson was shot in the head by the police, and they labeled it suicide. That's the kind of country, that's the perspective I have of this country. If you can do that to any of us, if you can drop bombs in Yemen and in Syria, or provide the drones to drop to kill brown people, I don't know what you would do with a virus or a vaccine. And that's my...
Renee, stay right there. I mean, Dr. Wolf, Renee comes from a certain body of experiences, and she represents a point of view. Why don't you speak to her?
Yes, look, I don't disagree with a lot of the things she says. I don't know all the details she's referring to. But my point would be, I think we need to have the conversations that you very reasonably bring up. But I also think that if we're in this house together and it's on fire, talking about the time you did me wrong last Christmas might have to wait till we're outside. And that's a lot to ask, right? And if I tripped you on the stairs last Christmas when we were both trying to get out of the house, you might be particularly nervous. And I have to understand that. But we can talk about what a crappy present I give you every year, or how I pretend I sent you a present, or how I gave you a Walmart gift certificate that said $10 but had $1.35 left on it. We can do that when we both get out of this building and we don't get burnt up in it, right? That being said,
Renee?
We might be next door, but
we're not in the same building. I live in a world where last week at recess, there was a drive-by shooting in front of the school. That's the world I live in. I don't think you live in the same building I do. My perspective is totally different because the experiences I've had, that my parents had, that my grandparents and great-grandparents had, were different, and they lead to how I'm seeing the world and the world that I'm in. Black people do not live in the same world unless they live with, unless they don't live in the community. Certainly not in Chicago. But when I talk to my 90-year-old auntie in Louisville, some of the same stuff is going on there. We just don't hear about it here as much. Black people are having bad experiences. We get COVID and go to the hospitals like that doctor who recorded herself on Facebook, and we don't get the same treatment. So,
stay right there, Renee.
Different, and racism.
Renee, hold on one second, because I've got a tight break. And Dr. Wolf, if you could stay with us for a couple minutes, because I'd like for you to engage Renee off air. Because this is a discussion. This is the kind of discussion that we need to have. This is the kind of discussion that we need to have. Because many of us, when we went to the hospitals last year, when we heard about COVID, when we heard what the symptoms were, as soon as we felt that we got something, because we could not work remotely for the most part. When we'd go to the hospital, we'd be turned away. And then when we returned to the hospital, we were so sick we'd have to be ventilated and then we'd die. So we have to look at all of those pieces in real time so that we can get through this. As Reverend Tisha Dixon Williams says, COVID is a snitch. It has revealed all that we are. But it also points us in the direction of where we need to go and who we need to become. Dwight, I want you to stay with me. CK, I want you to stay with me just for a hot second, because I want Dr. Wolf, who is extremely sensitive and very sensible. That's why he's here every week. He's making a plea for us to get well together. And what we're trying to do is just really set the table so that we can see all that is before us so that we can get there together. That's the only way it's going to work. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow morning. But stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. We're going to continue this discussion just for a short while. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day. Is Rob from Naperville still there? He doesn't know that Dr. Wolf's other profession is as a comedian. He has no idea.
He is still on the line.
I don't know a guy who is funnier. I mean,
I'm looking to get a gig as Chaparral's prep cook if enough people are. So.
No.
Both callers are on the line.
Fine cook.
If I could just add, Dr. Wolf, it's always good to have our day jobs. But my goodness, if your day job for any reason fails, something happens like you have a.
Do you mean when?
Promise
When?
career.
That was very elegant.
Just go to comedy. I mean, because sometimes our day jobs, if you live long enough, your day jobs don't reap the benefits that you expect. I mean, year in, year out. Oh. But just know that you have a viable career ahead of you right now. You don't have to do training. You don't have to go to, get some exposure to the comedy club.
And she's your agent.
Today. You can start right now.
She'll be your agent.
Right now, today. No need for prep. We need to talk to all kinds of just right now.
I told him.
I've attempted to work the comedy into the financial strategy, and I got to tell you, it's not always well received. People do not want running their money to make jokes. That's what I had is I changed my Zoom background to the airport in Argentina, which is famous in our business because there's no extradition for financial crimes from Argentina. I was using my Zoom background for a while until the compliance people decided that was not a productive use of the humor.
I love my Max. He is just as crazy as he could possibly be, and I love it. I love it. But you know what? But Renee, you still there?
I also live in Brooklyn, where somebody shot at our a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay. Well, Renee, I want you to engage Dr. Wolf because he is someone who is so sensitive and really is just desperate for us to be well and get out of this pandemic. And I think that we all are. I think we're just coming at it from different spaces. But Renee, you and Dr. Wolf, please speak with each other, engage each other.
Thanks for your patience, Renee. I appreciate honesty, and I know these are tough subjects and hard to talk about, so I don't want to take that for granted. And I do appreciate having the airing and having you sort of say what you need to say.
Renee, I know you're running into the schoolhouse.
I am.
So what do you want to say?
Back on, so I could get out of the car. No, and I appreciate that. It's just that, and I take this pandemic seriously. I was trying to wait for that Novavax to come here that's getting approved every place else, but I had to go on and take the Pfizer. Didn't really want to, didn't really trust it. I'm not anti-vax. I'm just anti not knowing what the effects of this new thing would do to my body. We don't live, my perspective is shaped by my surroundings, where I work at, where I live. There are gunshots going off in my neighborhood all the time. That shows me that my government doesn't care about me because nothing's being done to catch these people who are killing people, who are shooting people as they drive right in front of my school. That's the third shooting in the past, 3 weeks. One body was on the ground when kids came out. Why is it so violent here? If they don't care about us being protected from violence, do they care? I don't know, Santita. Do they care about us regarding this virus? Was it really designed? And there is germ warfare. Was it designed to take some people out? This country has a lot of people some of the people in power who do things like stage coups at the Capitol building. They don't care about us. And as we know, it wasn't just some random crazy people. There are people in government, high positions in government, who help do this. They don't want us to have our rights. Do they want us to have our lives? I don't know, Santita. Maybe staying up late last night to find pictures of my friend who just died, who was only 63. Maybe I didn't have enough sleep, and I'm hyper right now. Mm-hmm. But it's what I see going on. I can't disconnect what has been done to us in the past and is still being done to us right now. And they're not trying to make provisions for us to have a good future if they won't pass these laws that let us vote for who we want to represent us, or that give child care tax credits to mothers who need it. They don't care about the babies. They don't care about the elderly. We die at higher rates from COVID and everything else. Preventable things.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just not trusting of this system that's in place and of those who try to keep people who want to help us out of the system or make their power muted. Really, when you have the filibuster thing that mutes 51 people, the majority of the people, but you need to have the people who are in opposition to your rights vote with you. They don't care about us.
Well, why don't you respond to her, Dr. Wolf? And, because I know you've got to go, but I didn't want you, I did not want you to not hear each other. So, Dr. Wolf?
Sure. So I'm not sure there's a huge disagreement here, except for what you do with it, right? So I'm not speaking against or don't offer an alternative opinion about the historic wrongs of the present indifferences. My guess would be that it often feels like cruelty, but it's actually kind of criminal indifference as opposed to intention, right? That gets the trouble. But I think you're trying, even though the various authorities and their impulses and motivations certainly have been bad in many cases, so that it makes sense to be very skeptical, and I would urge you to remain very skeptical. But at some point, you also have to decide if it's on balance worth doing some of the things they suggest. Even the broken clock is right sometimes, and you have to kind of figure that out. And I think the reluctance to take the vaccine seriously actually was probably an initial attempt to make sure that there was enough vaccine for elite who would listen to their doctors tell them to take it. And we're now so deep into into this process that we kind of know that all the people who people worry are out to get them or don't care or hoarding all the social wealth and power, they've all been vaccinated 3 times, while other people are debating whether it's real and dying in droves. So I think the verdict's in. Right? I mean, I think the verdict on the vaccine is in. I don't think you should take a vaccine because the government of the United States told you so, and they've never not been looking out for people of color or low-income people or whatever else, right? I do not believe that. I think I would be hard for me to ask you to believe it, since I don't believe it, and it doesn't seem to particularly stand up with the history. I get all that. And I do think people also have contradictions. So the same government that does criminal indifference also does provide some needed services, right? And that's kind of the irony of all of it. So we both need the government to work for us. We need to be able to trust them. And there's a history of them being untrustworthy. They are both true. So I'm not sure we disagree, right? The question then becomes, what do you do when you need and rely on someone who isn't all that reliable? And that's a very difficult situation to be in, but I don't think it's exotic. And I think, it was kind of probably going to be difficult no matter what. But early on, I think it was maybe impossible or very difficult to make the decision. But 2 years and 800,000 lives, 50 million infections in, right? I think we kind of know that some of this advice is pretty good. And then if you're not sure you can trust someone's advice, at least in my opinion, it's often more interesting to see what they're doing than maybe what they're saying. And their verdict is quite clear. So, I mean, even everybody on Fox News, not to pick on them, I know Santita's there, but they all ran
Not
out.
anymore, but I have been.
Yeah. Have been, yeah. But everybody there ran out and got the first vaccine possible, shoving past the widows and orphans to be first in line. And then with that newfound lease on life, they went back and talked on TV about how you didn't need it for 6 months.
Well, they also did it after there was a requirement. I mean, a lot of people are all over the place about this.
Before.
Well, but some of them, because I know a lot of them. A lot of people have been all over the place. I just want to create an environment here where people can have the discussion, because Renee speaks to, I mean, she's been vaccinated, but she didn't want to be and she doesn't feel good about it. That's not a good thing because all that does is increase mistrust. And what I'm trying to do is find a way for us to get through this. It's not just the vaccine. You need an infection preventionist to tell people how to stop the spread. We're going to buffets and things like that. That is dangerous. That's a super spreader event. You've got the NFL, NHL, NBA, 90+% vaccinated, and they can't play games because people have COVID on the teams and on the staffs. So there's some things that we're not doing even with the vaccines beyond the boosters. So what I'm trying to do is first create an environment where people can feel heard. Whatever you do, I want you to feel heard. I want you to be affirmed. We're not doing that in this environment. That is why you have a fully vaccinated teacher like Renee who's calling it and giving us all of this stuff that comes from 100 years. And you can relate to that because your family came here escaping the Holocaust. Thank God they got in. So we've got to move this thing along because what we're doing right now, if we think it's bad now, wait till after Christmas because people are going out for Christmas. They are.
Oh yeah, and New Year's.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're doing it. And I cannot tell you the places where I have been where people, if I come in with a mask, people look at me with hostility. I'm like, wow, really? I don't even pay attention because I'm a grown woman. I'm going to protect myself. And I'm going to protect you. How about that? I'm going to do that. And I just, so Renee, you still there? I know she's got to go into class. But do we have Rob, is it from Naperville? I think he wants you to do some stand-up. Is it Rob in Naperville?
No, two families.
It's Ron in Naperville.
Ron, hey Ron, how you doing, sweetie? It's good hearing your voice.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to call in. It's been crazy town at work. As you probably remember, I'm an IT security guy, so we're having fun a lot of times. I wanted to thank Renee for her call-in. I'm a strong believer that perception is reality. The neuroscience is you perceive through your senses. And if your senses are telling you this, and this, that's how you build your reality model. And my wife's a neurobiologist, so hey, that's okay. And then she's also in quantitative finance, so I can speak a little intelligently because I get a little, secondhand smoke from my wife.
Hopefully it's secondhand info.
Yeah, well, that's good. No, I don't mean bad.
Depending on what she's smoking, it may or may not guide the most prudent decision making. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, she's dealing with an SEC thing right now. But okay. But having said that, you're right, Dr. Wolf, from the point of view of, look at what people are doing, not what they're saying, because that actually, I think, is one of the most sage things we can do as we can perceive that. We can kind of say, hey, the people, even the pundits who are alt-right, alt-left, alt-whatever, alt-pot roast, they're all basically kind of saying, I don't want to die, I'm going to do this. Even if they then mouth it all up. And I look at the common sense. You go to the bathroom, you're going to wash your hands, right? Your mom taught you that,
Everybody doesn't.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
That, you wouldn't eat a lasagna off the city street, would you? Maybe you would if you haven't had lasagna or food. But for the most part, you'd at least wash off the hot dog that fell. I think of Eddie Murphy's ice cream, and then it falls. He isn't even picking the ice cream off the thing. He's just going to cry. It's okay. I look at these are very sensible things that we forgot. And because we're all living in our personal echo chambers where we're being recycled air, I hate to say it this way, but it's like a closed loop human centipede that we're all living in, and we're all kind of serving and living off of the same detritus, and we're not improving the food mix. We need to actually be real humans, look around, perceive, take educated guesses. If 100 people are walking in this direction and only one is walking in that, and the fire seems to be in the direction of the one guy walking, I'll go away from the fire. You know, this is just unfortunate. And then, yeah, we are playing tons of politics, and it's brutal that we take these opportunities to rise above, and instead we climb into the muck and mire.
Oh, Ron, sweetie, you there? Oh wow, he was on a roll. And Carol, I'm putting up Chaparral's number so that you can call her. Okay, and this should be it. Max, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. Dwight, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, why don't you weigh in, because I haven't heard from you in a minute, and I know you. This is another one of your big fans. I mean, I just need to cede this day to you, Max, because everybody's waiting for you always.
Well, if Dr. Frankenstein is the Frankenstein, hey, I got another wonderful idea for us. Can you blame Frankenstein for having a little pause? I mean, if you look at what the government has done for us for the last, as Renee said, for the last 200 years, and they keep having these great ideas at our expense, and we look up for some reason and we got up the wrong brain, and the mob is chasing us through the castle with torches, burning down the castle based on some idea that the government had in our behalf, some idea that Dr. Frankenstein had that we had no part of, just the victims of. Pardon us if we have pause when they come along with another great idea. And that's how a lot of black people look at these vaccines, and look at even these
voting rights, Build Back Better.
This is another great idea that Dr. Frankenstein has on our behalf that we end up being the victims and have to suffer for.
But you know, but the other piece is this: because we're not going anywhere. You know, as Reverend Jackson has said, we came over here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. I mean, we're here. So where do we go from here? And I pose that question to you, Dwight, and to you, Max. I mean, where do we go from here? Because it's very clear that we approach this American project from very different experiences. Very different experiences. I mean, we're even looking at giving people who have not gotten their citizenship. We're ensuring that they get the right to vote in New York. And hey, I'm not mad at anybody. But Black Americans are stepping back like, wait a minute, I can't even get I got the Supreme Court that tells me that America is a very different place than it was 50 years ago. And God knows we know that's not true. So, I mean, you know, it's like, help me. Dwight, you, and then you, Max.
Well, I think you're clear on this. Is that, again, I don't think that these white supremacists have any notion of turning this into a real democracy. They don't want us to have the right to vote. They don't want this to be a equal distribution of wealth and power. It's like the first sister called in said, the country is built on racism, its margin of profit is based on racism, and its self-concept is built around racism. And so,
well, let me ask you this: is it racism, or is it classism broadly? Because the only people who had the right to do anything first and foremost in this society were propertied white men.
It is a classism it is a racism that grows out
Classism.
There is a classism that grows out of racism because the definition of privilege is based on race. And so everything is delineated based on race. And so we're not accidentally at the bottom of the totem pole. We were put there for the purposes of people being on top of us and other people being on top of them. And so unless you deal with that part of it, that the classism is based on race, then we will always be victims of white supremacy. And so democracy will never work for them because that equals the playing field, and they're not looking for equal playing field because it compromises their place of power and privilege.
Well, Max?
I mean, I think my take might be a tiny bit different, and also my experience is no doubt different. But I think there's an interesting discussion that goes on now between the different sort of ruling groups in the U.S., where I think one is sort of meritocratic and they're much more interested in class, and one is traditionalist and populist and they're more interested in white supremacy. And I don't think they agree. And I think those are two very different kind of trends or threads running through American history, right? Which is whoever makes it, are they okay? Or do they have to look just like me, be the same religion, the same gender, since we did sort of forget sexism in there, which seems to be a problem for the 52 or 53% of us who aren't male, which seems like a non-trivial portion last time I was doing basic math. So there's probably a lot going on, but I think once you believe that you're better than someone else or lesser than someone else, or that some people are better and worse than other people, this doesn't contain itself. It doesn't become just race or just gender or just religion or just wealth, right? It becomes a hierarchical world where the few dominate the many on a bunch of axes of separation and exploitation. And I think that is the one thing all these different theories of exactly how to make sense of too many things to explain would have in common. But I do think we're not going to solve those problems realistically in the short run. But I think our lives get immeasurably better and people get inspired to be better and do better if we make progress. And I think if we stop making progress or we give up, we actually pretty quickly backslide. And then I think things get really nasty really fast. And I think we're on the edge of one of those periods of trying to sort of not backslide more. And I think that's really urgent. And then the other thing I'd say on the subject is I think COVID both reveals a lot that's wrong in the society, but it's also an opportunity in a weird way, which is microbes don't follow our social conceits. You may think you're better than someone or lesser than someone, or you might be richer, you might be poorer or older or younger or white or non-white, but you cough in that subway train and everybody's at risk if you're not wearing your mask. And you wear your mask on that subway train and everybody's better off. So there is also the kernel for seeing how silly these divisions can be and how arbitrary they actually are, so that people don't start feeling lesser than someone else or better than someone else, right? Because the real crime of one person's sense of superiority is what it does to other people and how it can breed a sense of inferiority in those people, which to me is the bigger crime than someone's puffed up, empty sense of superiority is somebody else's life-altering, potentially soul-crushing sense of inferiority.
Dwight?
So when you have a chance to correct some of those wrongs, like getting some of these bills passed, and you don't take advantage of that, then what does that say about those who are on the outside of the process? I mean, because our only hope
agree
outside of revolution is democracy, is that there is some commitment by the many to elevate the few. And so if we don't have that kind of commitment, if the few make sure that it never happens, then what becomes our recourse?
Yeah, we can see it, right? People turn on each other. They turn inward, right? They turn to substances. They turn to sort of acts of violence or desperation, or they kind of slink off and sort of run out the clock in the shadows. And none of that is the highest or best use of their talents or capabilities, right? So to me, that is the tragedy. That's the social suboptimality or the tragedy, the personal story. Right? There's so many people sitting out there who could have, would have, should have, and have every talent and every desire to solve the most pressing social problems that we have, and they weren't given a chance. So we're all without them. And I think we've missed that discourse in America. So that young person may be a person from limited means, or a person from the wrong part of town, or a person of the quote-unquote wrong race or ethnicity or gender. That person, what that person could have and should have done would have fulfilled them. We talk about that. That's true. That's the individual side. But maybe it's the different sort of educational background or whatever. But the big loss is the social loss, right? The big loss is that we all could have gotten the song they were going to sing, the idea they were going to germinate, the solution they were going to come up with, the medicine they were going to come up with. We're all without that now. So it is a chance for us all to do better by reducing that, right?
Dwight?
I'm listening to Dr. Max. I think, though, that what happens to us is that it seems like every generation, one way or another, we end up on the bottom of the totem pole. And so what we get is promise after promise and commitment after commitment. But when the tide rolls around, it's always wait till next year. Dr. King they was asking Dr. King the same question 50 years ago that they still asking is, why don't you just wait? Dr. King said, why we can't wait. And 50 years now is we got opportunity to change the whole economy, and they're saying, well, just wait, just why we can't wait. It's the same thing for us year after year. And at some point, when do we say enough is enough? When do we stop believing that in the reality of things are going to change and we just do the right thing? At what point do we become less idealistic and more realistic and become like Renee and say, when I look out my window, this is what I see every day? And at what point do we begin to think that this is not accidental, that this is conspiratorial, that's designed to keep us locked down, to keep their foot on our neck? At what point do we begin to come to those conclusions? And again, and that's where the virus comes in, is that our people believe that the virus can be part of a conspiracy, another conspiracy just to keep us down.
You know, that is a very real thought out here, and which I think explains why the vaccination rate in Africa is so low. There's just, there's a lot. And I think until we really sit down and have honest, earnest, forthright discussions in which people's experiences, historical and current, are affirmed, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just not. See, Max, so many Black people were turned away from treatment. Just acknowledgement that they had COVID last year. And it reinforced.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure it's over, right? There's recent stories that suggest it may not be over either, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, and when you present and they just send you home with no medicine, that becomes problematic. And so I'm saying we have to listen to the Renees, because the Renees are really the majority. Because she's vaccinated and is not happy about it. More than COVID out here. There's pneumonia out here. My brother just got out of the hospital. He's been in the hospital for 4 or 5, 6 days, almost a week. He didn't have COVID, but he sure was sick. He had a virus.
Yeah, no, all the other illnesses that were around before, they go away. Right?
Which have gone unheeded, untreated. I'm just saying, I think that we have got to, we have not had a discussion about universal single payer or Medicare for all in a pandemic. What?
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
That's crazy. I mean, it's just illogical to me.
Before the pandemic, by the way. But yeah, I mean, for sure,
that's crazy, Max.
Bizarre.
I mean, if we're trying to move toward healthfulness, how can you not talk about a Medicare for all system, even if you do it temporarily? so that people can
Or how
get
about
treated.
the fact that we gave a higher cash benefit for a longer period of time nationally for a while because of COVID, and it was a smashing success until we immediately stopped it. It was kind of wild. Just as a macroeconomist, if you try something and it works that well, normally the first impulse is, well, we better stop doing that. You've tried lots of things that don't do that well and continue them for decades. It is amazing.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but wait, everyone seems to have forgotten. We supposedly got rid of that extra benefit because it was going to make everyone go back to work. And some of us on your show argued that they didn't think that was going to happen. Well, we got rid of it, and no one went back to work. They're just poor and desperate. So we stopped doing something that worked, went back to something that didn't work, and we've decided to keep doing that thing that clearly doesn't work. Yeah, those are not inspiring decision patterns. I get it, for sure.
So I'm just saying, I want us to have more fulsome, earnest, open conversations. I mean, because that's one of the things that I love and admire about you. You are willing to do that. I mean, and you will walk into a lion's den and you're like, look,
these people everyone's willing to talk to me as much as I'm willing to talk to them, and my time is no more valuable. So I'm learning from Renee as much as, or probably more than she's learning from me. And even if you know something, it's good to be reminded too.
Well, no, I think she's learning from you. Renee would not have called you if she didn't feel that she was going to be affirmed by you. So that's one of the things that, that I appreciate, which is why, I like talking to people. Like I just found out Jussie Smollett on another topic. The one black juror is now talking. I want to find him. I'm going to start looking for him. So everybody, if you know him, let him know I'm looking for him. And not looking to bring him onto the show to embarrass him, but I'd like to know if he heard a lot of the issues, the facts that were excluded from the case, how he would feel about it. Because it was very clear that the things that he was saying were incomplete. He did not know a lot of the things that we've been told, things that the judge absolutely would refuse to allow entered into the case. And I just think that, like in Renee's case, and there's so many of them, if we could just begin to talk to each other, Max, really.
Sure.
I think it would make a big difference.
That covers recommendation that covers everyone's needs if you don't know them.
That's it. And you won't know them if you don't hear them.
And I appreciate Max's candor and honesty and boldness. You give his point of view. I think it's an important point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to try to always bring balance to it because our experiences are very, very, very different. And our experiences are very, very real.
Yeah.
To us.
Absolutely.
One of the things I will
can't have those experiences. Mm-hmm. The best I can do is hear about them to know a little more what I don't know, which is actually, in my opinion, learning. I mean, that is learning.
Well, but one of the things I will tell you when I met Max early on, I can say this, and I will just say this. I'm not going to disclose all the personal things that he and I talk about because they are private. But we have talked about our grandparents' and forebears' experiences in the Holocaust and in slavery, and how that shaped, in particular, our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, and how it gave them some really pointy, let's say some really sharp edges, just in the name of survival. But the fact that he is intersectional and is always looking for a way to, even when we disagree, we're not disagreeable, and he's trying to look for a way to when and where can we enter here so that we can continue to engage. And that is one of the things that I admire, respect, and love about him. But I admire and respect and love that about you, Dwight, because you have always continued to open up these intellectual and spiritual vistas for me since I was a child. And I want to thank you for that. So it's just been a thing of beauty to hear the two of you engage, and to have Renee spur us on. And I want to thank everybody. And Ron, I wish we could have gotten more of you. I love you, Ron. But I just want to thank you because it's a privilege to be with all of you every day, and that God gives me strength and opportunity. It's just a privilege. It's a privilege. You all are you're a gift. And I thank God for you opening your hearts and your eyes and your ears, inclining them to me and my friends every day. But that's what you are. You all are all my friends, and you are family. I love you all. Max, would you like to say anything before we go?
Yeah, thanks to everyone. To me, that look, it's sometimes the conversations can get very passionate or even a little bit uncomfortable, but that's usually how you learn the most, right? So I appreciate the opportunity.
Dwight?
No, Maximilian, always good to talk to you. And Marty killed you high. Likewise, Peter.
Oh, my Aunt Martita?
Uh-huh.
That's
She
right.
is fine.
That's right. I love her. I love my Aunt Marty. There you go. She was my babysitter. His sister, Max, used to babysit for my brothers and I, which was always wonderful. And she was so sweet, but strict. Cool. I don't know how she pulled that off, but it was she wasn't going to take any guff. I love it. But I love all of you. And so I'm going to let you all go. Max, I'm going to talk with you a little bit later on today. Dwight, the same. Wonderful. I love everybody. You want to say anything, Max, before we go?
Thanks all. Well, just thanks to everyone, and be safe out there.
Oof.
Wherever you come down on these things, take care of yourself and the people around you, because probably no one else will.
Please take care of yourselves. Because, I mean, look, this stuff is still out here. It's still out here. It's still out here. It's still out here. Omicron is mild at this time. We don't know what might be coming behind it. We just don't know. But we do know that if you have some physical distances, if you wash your hands. We have Max on this show and Dwight McKee, Dr. Shanina Knighton, registered nurse, PhD. She's a research clinical scholar at Case Western Reserve University. She's an infection preventionist. There are only about 16,000 in the world, 5,000 in the United States, a little bit more than that. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why someone like Dr. Knighton is not in the discussion. She's an infection preventionist, and her job is to do just that, to find ways to prevent infection. I mean, she's done a lot of she's shown us a lot of practical ways to really navigate. She has a video, I'll send it to you, Max, on how to literally wash your hands.
Cool.
The fact that we shouldn't be having buffets. So if you have a buffet, everything should remain covered, and you should have one person who is gloved and masked. And let's be careful at these tables. I mean, and gargling. I know people jumped on Senator Ron Johnson. He didn't say that it was a cure, but she said, no, you want to cut down on your viral load. So you gargle, you do a deep gargle, but you follow the instructions, because most of us put the Listerine or whatever in our mouths, and we just gargle, and that's it. No, you're supposed to gargle for 20 seconds. She said even your mask has instructions. You're not supposed to wear a mask for 8 hours. If your mask says wear it for 4 hours, you wear it for 4 hours, but there's a way to take it off. All of these things. See, we're not being taught that. Washing up under your nails with a toothbrush, all of those things, and just hearing her share these things with us, it's important. So I want to hear all of these layers of protection that we need so that we can be as healthy as we can be. If that's all I've got to say about that. So everybody, please take care, and thank you, family, for being together. What'd you say, Dave? You said washing my hands is very painful to do. Oh, well, I hope, but baby, you still have to do it. You really, really do. And you have to do a thorough washing, a thorough hand washing, so that you can be healthy. Okay? So everybody, I love you. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow. And we're counting down to Christmas, and I'm going to take a little time off for Christmas. Yes. And blessings to everybody. Love you all. Love you, Max. Love you, Dwight. Love you. Love you, Martita.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Be well.
Love you, Matt. Thank you so much for everything. God bless. Bye-bye. I love you all. Let me turn this off. Yeah.